We're gonna move on to the next panel right now. I really wasn't kidding. I am here to stay. I'm staying. I'm gonna bother you guys until lunchtime. I know you guys are getting hungry. Just bear with us a bit. Our next panel right now is on optimizing content by understanding SEO, consumer behaviors, and analytics. As you're all aware, content marketing has already solidified its stature and as a powerhouse, in the digital marketing realm. In growing an audience and reader base, it certainly proved how formidable the practice is, especially when integrated with other data-driven disciplines. It's no longer a trend. It has already forced its way to stay. Here to discuss this panel with us, is Adrian Turscan, who's the Director of SEO at Resolution MENA, Hala Droubi, Managing Editor at Rasif 22, Wael AlFayez, General Manager at AlKhaleejiah Advertising and PR Company. Please welcome to stage. Who did I miss? Thank you for joining me today. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Good. So I'm glad there's another editor on this panel with me because she could tackle all the questions I'd like answers to. So we've got the content perspective today, we've got the perspective on how to push it out, and the SEO specialist with us today. And here's maybe, I'm trying to figure out how to get this started, because do you start with content, or do you start with the research first, or do you start with SEO first? How's this usually done? What is the ideal practice?
I mean, if I can start, I mean,
Sure.
if you're, obviously most news organizations or content creators usually have a strategy, and some of the very important pillars of the strategy, the first one should be actually, you know, how the website is designed, the user experience on the website. SEO is I think it's an ongoing process that never stops. There should be collaboration between technical teams, editorial teams to an extent. And another aspect that I believe that a lot of publishers in the region are not digging deep into is consumer behavior. It's not very hard to get actual data on your consumers. If you're using Google Analytics, there's a big section that covers consumers, and there's another one that covers their behavior. You can look at your landing page speed. You can look at your actual consumers' flow, their behavioral flow through your website, which was the landing page, which page they visited before they exited, and the site speed plays a big role in actually getting consumers on board. Not just obviously the quality of the content is very important. Another aspect of the content is trust. People always say content is king. We do believe that trust is king. You need to have trustworthy content to get people back on your website. A few just general numbers. I was reading a few reports. One stated that 47% of visitors expect a web page to load in 2 seconds or less. Another one...
2 seconds?
2 seconds, yes. Another one I was reading is that 40% of visitors usually leave a web page if it takes more than 3 seconds. Those are all available. You can find them on Salesforce. They've got a blog that does great research into content. This is just a small part of it. And obviously, as we stated, the quality of the content needs to be up there. When you look at content, it's not just text, it's images. You need to optimize them to an extent. You need to ensure that your content is relevant to your visitors. Going and digging deep into consumer behavior, you can find out what kind of content your users are visiting. You can look at the high bounce rates and try to fix them up to have relevant links within that same page they're leaving really fast. How much time consumers are actually spending reading an article or whatever type of content it is. To an extent, this is a big indication. If they spend little time on your web page, that means your content is not interesting to an extent. So you need to look at that to an extent and try to find out what interests your consumers a lot more and focus on that to an extent.
All right, so this is going to take me to you, Hala, right now.
Where do we start? How do we start?
When you start writing your articles, I'm not going to call them content,
Yeah, but they will know now why. Yeah.
When you start writing your articles, do you take all of this into consideration, or do you just find a topic and see what's wrong about it and start writing? What's your process on this?
So I come from a different background. I'm a journalist and I'm an editor. And so the first thing is I mean, what I try to do all the time and my team is we stop thinking of ourselves as content creators. Because the moment there's something about the word that makes you feel that when you say content, then there's something empty and you're trying to fill it. We try to go back to the basics. We are journalists, we're storytellers, we're reporters. That's what we do. So we focus on doing what we do really well. That said, it doesn't mean that we operate in isolated headquarters without knowing what's happening in the street and what people are talking about. You need to, I mean, your job as a reporter and as a journalist is to see what is the conversation. What is it that people are asking about? What is it that what is it that's trending? And when I say trending, I don't just mean on Twitter. I mean trending in society. So we do start from
in
the
regards
people.
to the niche you're writing about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who's my audience? I understand my audience. What is it that they're concerned about? What is it that they're doing? So I do start from a place of yes, I do want to know what my audience are talking about and what is it that they want to know. But then I stop and I start doing my job as a reporter. Because when we go back to SEO for us as publishers, what does it mean? It means that when you're searching for a topic, say for instance, child marriage, because this is something we covered a lot. Ideally, I would want every person who looks for child marriage in the region to find my articles on their first page on Google. This is what I would want ultimately. Now, we do know that there are certain things that we should do. We know that it's important to have original content. We know that it's important that Google rewards original content. Google rewards shareable content that's being shared. Google rewards articles that are, when you become a reference, like when people use your articles as links in their own articles. But when we do our job, we put all these things aside and we just do our jobs as reporters really well, because when you do this, everything falls in place. So you could apply that to whatever it is that you're doing. If you are a comedian and then you're called a content creator because you make YouTube videos, go back to being a comedian and do it really well, and then everything else will follow. I think Google and SEO rewards good work.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to take this a step back for a bit, because I want to try to remember the objective of SEO and optimization and all that is to get as much traffic as you can to your website, to your article, to end up on the first page on your Google. Taking that into consideration, as a journalist, you're right.
Right, I write and I edit.
And if you look at the fact that audience right now prefer videos over writing, do you change your format into videos? Do you change your format into infographics? Do you find a way to complement them together?
That's a very good question, actually, because while, I mean, there's this fine line between knowing our job and being arrogant, we do know, I mean, we always say we don't just want to tell the stories that you want to hear, but there's nothing wrong with telling that story in a way that's interesting to you. So this is why this is when you need to stay aware to how much time are people spending on these articles. Like we know from Receive 22 that the average time a person spends on an article is 3 minutes from our analytics. So this means they're going to spend 3 minutes, which is around 600 words. So I have a story that's around 900 words. I'm not going to kill my story because the audience won't read more than 600 words. I will ask myself, can I tell this story in more interesting and engaging ways? So I'm going to tell that same story using infographics when I can replace words with images, using videos. I can make it a bit shorter. So what we try to do is we do not compromise quality and storytelling, but we try to be creative in the ways we tell these stories. And this is why we need to listen to what people want and how they want to consume their information.
Adrian's getting ready.
Yeah, so I think the successful SEO is about really bringing together the creative use of content and the technologies that empower that content to be visible on the search engines. So a good SEO's job is really to understand the pillars that really is required to be all optimized and work very well combined, that will eventually lead you to content visibility, which is your primary goal.
Right.
Once the content visibility is achieved, then obviously you have higher traffic,
Right.
more relevant traffic as well. That's when it comes to keywords. We as SEOs trying to find out information about our clients or our customers based on what they're looking for, what their intent is. And trying to match it with what we have to offer in terms of our expertise and content, which I agree that it has to be in various different formats, whatever actually is suitable for the article or the website, based on its type and its purpose. So really, it is about a good SEO is really about content. It's the primary focus of it. About platform integration and platform optimization, having a good CMS, a well-coded website, a mobile-friendly user experience, and finally to have links coming into the website. Many people forget that links are still important,
Right.
and you need to create publicity based on who is linking to you. The trust and authority that we talked about earlier is really measured by the number and the quality, most important, the quality of backlinks or links pointing to your website. And those can come from social media or industry websites, partnership websites, and clients as well. So basically recommendations, links, referrals pointing not just traffic to your website, but kind of like pointing to your website that I trust you and I think that source, that website, that brand knows what they're talking about. They have good content. That's why I'm going to effectively vote on them by providing a backlink to their website. As SEOs, you have to understand that as well and go after these relevant backlinks too.
Sorry, Rita, but we were having a conversation before we come in, and
Yeah.
you were telling me that it's very important to have the keywords, certain keywords in the first few paragraphs of your article, which is something I didn't know about SEO, but usually when you do a good article, you usually have your information in your lead or in your not graph. So what I find interesting is Google is becoming so, what they're trying to do is that you cannot fool it. You can just do your job the way you should do it, and it will.
Exactly. So content creators should really focus on the quality of content, but with the background information of what, who they're trying to reach, who they're trying to target, message to, who's the content, who's going to read the content. And typically what we find is that in many ways we're just trying to push our own, like advertisement, how advertisement works, is we push our own content to the public in our format, in our ways, and sometimes we forget to listen to our customers and what they want, what their intention are, and we don't provide usually the best, most useful, most relevant content. That's what we usually find when we audit our clients' websites.
I'm very pleased you brought this up because when I want to discuss SEO with you, it's a lot of people, when they think of SEO, they think of keywords, meta tags, and that's what you need to do at the end of every article in the back end. Just make sure you put these in. Repeat as many keywords as you. And it's nice to see there's this new approach, and I think it's because there's a lot of progress that has happened, at least within the past year or so. There's with the introduction of Google AMP and instant articles. It sort of changed the landscape of optimizing content. There's a new way, like a year ago, everybody used to say evergreen content was king. Now there's a lot of talk about ephemeral content, on how that wins over evergreen as well. But then there's confusion, and how do you optimize that? I want to cover a bit more on re-optimizing previous content that people have, like evergreen content, what succeeded before, and how to re-optimize those as well. I want to hear Wael's perspective as well on the UX, the design, what takes a role in optimizing all content. Like, here we have, let's call you guys one whole team, you all work together. We've got Hala over here who creates amazing content. The next step is to ensure it gets the proper reach, get the proper distribution, and then more importantly in today's world is how can she monetize that in order to sustain. If we can walk towards those type of steps and see what we can do and enhance and like maybe work together.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, from our experience within the group, I think having a strong technical team is a must that works closely with the editorial and the advertising or the monetizing side, which we cover at AlKhaleejiah. Website design, I mean, there's a lot of tools you could use to test out the speed even before you actually launch it, to ensure that, you use tools to check out, the previous heat maps, how the trends on your website are, and those, play a big role in, the user experience side to an extent. And what we try to do within our organization is to try to preview everything with advertisements on it to ensure that, we're building reach on these websites. The end result for us is to actually try to monetize these websites. So we want to make sure not just the content readers are satisfied, the advertisers are happy. It's showing, next to content that's actually relevant to an extent. And the session before this was about ad fraud and all that. And there's a lot of talk about that. I mean, from our side, the thing that helps is it used to be a print-based organization, so editorial policies changed to complement digital to an extent. We try our best to ensure the same integrity is there on digital. But as I said previously, I mean, the web design, the user experience are big roles in the way you're creating content or actually monetizing these websites.
And
Should we worry about bounce rate? I'm sorry, because this is like a never-ending debate we seem to have. Everybody's like, bounce rate is important, it's important.
Yeah.
But you look at consumers or readers' behavior, they're on social media, they find an interesting link, they read it, and then they move back to the social media channel. They usually don't browse the page itself. So is it a concern that like editors right now should consider is like, why did they exit the page? Was it not interesting, or was it really they finished the article, they liked the article, they went back to what they were originally doing?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You want to answer?
What I'd say actually, it is. I mean, high bounce rates are quite concerning to the content creators and the actual sales forces within the companies. I mean, what you can try to do is, I mean, if you own a website to an extent, what you're trying to do is try to get your consumer to stay there as long as you can. So if you have a certain web page that has high bounce rates, you could further try to explore it, see if you can add something onto it, relevant articles, relevant content to an extent, to try to get these consumers to stay on board and not go back to their social media website or whatever they're following. Yeah.
It really depends on the purpose of the website, what the website is for. There are many different categories of website. An e-commerce website, I think, their job is to
Stay there for
do
as
the
long as
transaction as soon as possible with the least amount of friction, and therefore, the high bounce rates would be really bad for an e-commerce website. Whereas the bounce rate is defined as not or clicking away from the page or not going any further into the website. But for example, for a blog or an article website, bounce rates are actually good, and we see 70-60% bounce rates on those websites, because typically what happens is a user comes to the blog, reads the article, finds that what they were looking for, and they leave. And that's perfectly normal. They sometimes don't click on another article which is not relevant to them. But for other websites, business websites, e-commerce websites, you need to measure not just the bounce rate. It's good to put in place more metrics, different type of metrics in the KPIs. So I would look at engagement on the content, how engagement and bounce rate would play together. And sometimes engagement rates explains why bounce rates are so high. And then other metrics as well, for example, conversion rates. A website, typically all websites would have to have a goal set up in Google Analytics or other measurement platforms, which are being looked at as the primary focus. And then you have smaller KPIs or micro goals, in addition to this one or two macro goals, that really define on how the visitor or the user has engaged with the website and how they reached the final conversion.
Yes, I was gonna. I agree with what you said. Is for us, yes, there are other more important things. How much time are you spending with the article? If you've spent
Right.
3 minutes on this article and then you left, this is great. This is great news for us that you've read the article and this is what we want. You've clicked on it. You've probably came from Facebook. So you clicked on it, so Facebook algorithm recognizes that you've clicked on one of our articles, so it's probably going to show you more articles from us,
Right.
and you're probably going to spend time with this article. Now, if it's a bonus if you do go to other articles, but it's not the most important measure in the success of our articles. Yeah.
All right. What would you consider, Hala, as high quality content? For the web, we're talking.
That's a good question.
What characterizes high quality content for you?
I mean, for me as a journalist and
For
for
you.
Asif 22, I mean, if it's relevant to the reader, if it's something that's relevant to their lives, but it's also tackled from a new, it brings a new perspective in an original way, and it's told in a creative way. So these three elements, it's relevant to the lives of the people. It also adds, and there's something new to it. So this is something that people are discussing, but we're not just repeating the conversation that they're having. We've done more reporting. We're adding an interesting and original element. So there's originality, and we're telling it creatively, which is what you said. Have we done some videos? Are we using infographics? So for me, this is quality content, or this is a good article.
And these are all characteristics, and these are all characteristics that Google would reward you on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because when you do that, when it's an original article, when it's a relevant topic, but from an original angle, another journalist might find it interesting and might start writing about this angle, and he would use your article as reference in his article.
Right.
So Google rewards that, and they would spend more time with it. So Google rewards that. So doing these things would have Google reward you.
And when it comes to Google, the algorithm is changing on a daily basis.
Yes.
This is making your life probably a lot more difficult as these machines
Really
are getting
difficult, yeah.
smarter and smarter.
Exactly.
Just looking at the past year, how far has this come? What have the developments been just within the past year?
Well, Google is known to create new and introduce new search interfaces and ranking algorithms and changes in its algorithm by the thousands per year. So, and it's increasingly growing. The rate of growth is really because of this new algorithm that they put in place. It's not just an algorithm, it's an engine behind the algorithm. It's the artificial intelligence, the AI behind Google is called RankBrain. And RankBrain is really considering new keyword phrases that have not been introduced before. So new kind of ways to express intent. And it's trying to understand how it can pull more relevant content more dynamically to the search interface when people are looking for it. So it's very difficult to and even Google engineers are actually trying to understand how the software, not how it works, but how it learns based on consumer behavior and input, and trying to figure out the best ways to really make it useful to get relevant results. I think good content is really about whether it has good visibility already. So that already shows you whether Google has find it interesting. And Google is always about the user. So they're really looking to fulfill users' intent, and their primary goal is to show relevant information to whoever needs it at the specific time, specific location. So the content, I agree, it definitely has to be new, and Google looks at if the copy or the article is an exact copy or exact match of a previously written article. They're also looking at different
They're looking
other
at
aspects
tone,
as well.
for example, now, is it positive? Like they're even looking at the emotions of the
They could
itself.
do as well, yes, as well as relevance. The relevance is the most interesting, because Google learns about the user behavior and learns about what you typed before in the search engine. And many times we forget it that we we give user kind of like a breadcrumb trail, if you like, based on our previous search history. And because we don't usually delete our cookies very often, we give away all this information to the search engine, and they can use this information to gradually show us different, more and more relevant information. And that's really interesting, and they have demonstrated this in many conferences before, that how it actually works in practice. And they're trying to understand how the user actually, how their behavior online is evolving as they see the results from the search engines, what kind of keywords they will type in thereafter, and what sort of content should be there. No search engine page is the same. For one specific keyword, Google can provide thousands of different search results for exactly the same keywords. And many people, they're hooked on what is my ranking in Google. It depends. It depends really on who is searching.
Well, in regards to users' behavior, what should we be looking at when we're thinking of marketing our content and sending it out there? What are the best practices as well on sharing our content, spreading it out?
I mean, there are a lot of aspects to look at. I mean, you can look at how these consumers are actually visiting your website and try to improve where they're coming from. I mean, if they're coming from social media networks, I mean, you can check out what's coming in from Twitter, what's coming in from Facebook. If you're getting more visitors coming in from Twitter and you have the same amount of followers or fans, maybe you need to do something on the other side to actually fix up your headlines on Facebook or have more relevant content there to actually push it. But I mean, one of the key things is insights on consumer behavior, and you can get those through, Google Analytics or other tools that are available in the market. And another thing when we talk about consumers and insights is data, obviously. And data is, currently the way we look at it, it's being monetized a lot more. It's being looked at as a sales tool a lot more than an actual tool that could benefit the editorial part to an extent. The profiling of your actual users, their interests to an extent, they do play a big role in defining your audience and trying to ensure that you get more consumers on board.
However, if we look at data for editorial, I remember reading an article recently about how they've got droids writing articles based on the data that it's been collecting. Have you heard of this? So they collect data off their website, they find out what their users are interested in, what they like, and then they start creating personalized content for that reader.
Yeah. And they do it on the fly, basically. And the newer platforms allow you to auto-create content, basically, based on this.
So sorry, these are the algorithms are creating the content as well? Yeah,
like 2,500 words in 2 minutes, by the way.
Yeah.
It's scary a bit, but
they gather all the information from the net or from like their data of whatever, and then based on whatever. So you go to a website, it reads all your information, it's got all the breadcrumbs Adrian was talking about,
And all the cookies.
collects all, so they understand your habit, they understand everything you do, and they personalize content for you based on your interests.
And this makes me wonder, what would the world look like if what we get and if the information we get is only what we want to hear, and it's a recreation of what we're interested in. And this is where it's important to have the human element, because us as editors, we see what people are looking for, but sometimes we ask ourselves, do we only want to give them what they're looking for? There are important stories, there are things happening in countries that people don't seem to be interested in. So we're not arrogant to think that, we're going to impose things on them, but we will always need to challenge, okay, I think this is an important story, but I know that this person is only interested in this and this and that. How can I find an angle and tell my story that I think is interesting in a way that would get them reading it? Yeah.
I totally agree. Do we have questions from the audience? I want to double check since I don't want the same thing to happen like the last panel. Do you have any questions from the audience? No? Are we good? So we can move on over here. Okay. What is he are you signaling or? I'm sorry.
We're fine.
So that what you meant is this dynamic content is it has many different formats as well. So we see increasingly those kind of content which is pre-created for a given audience, and sometimes the data's job and the statistics are used or to understand who is looking at the website, who is visiting the website right now, and how can I change my content to fit to make it more relevant to their purpose. So we've seen case studies of SAP, for example, in our region, in the UAE, where they tested just only the homepage, and they created 3 or 4 different variations based on the different industries they wanted to talk to and offer different products and services. And they knew a few IP addresses that this IP address belongs to an oil company, this IP address belongs to a software company. So they could customize their content on the fly, that what those articles have been pre-written and pre-created by editors. It's just how we present our content and how smart are we with providing the best experience to our users. That's the question.
A lot of SEO specialists and marketeers recommend to editors on look at your analytics, look at what your top 20 rank links are or articles are, what were the most popular ones, and find ways to repackage them and distribute them again, or optimize them again and send them out and distribute and just recycle the content that you have. I'm sure you're probably on my side on this. You probably don't agree with this kind of approach.
But not always, because sometimes if you have an article about, say, I always go back to child marriage because this is something we've covered a lot. So if you have a good article there, and then something happens in a country where there's an accident, so this is a good time to resurface this article that you've worked so hard on. So I don't think it's always a bad thing. You need to be really aware of what is your content, what do I have, and then to see what's happening and what's trending, and how can I resurface these things that are still relevant, that I can still show the people and the readers. I can still share the people. So it's not always a bad thing. So
agreed.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on these?
I mean, if they tell you those are the most read stories, I don't think you should recycle them. If they're about a certain, let's say they cover politics or they cover sports, you should focus on that aspect a lot more, and create content tailored to this audience to an extent to ensure that you get returning visitors, you get a higher visit rate to an extent.
For us as agencies, we sometimes have to tap into those resources, and assets. We don't want to throw out content. Good content sometimes can be reformatted, repurposed. That's what we call it usually as a technical term, is when you take a content that's an evergreen content. That means that people are, there's a constant trend or a growing trend in that content, like cryptocurrencies, for example. Is going to be an evergreen content until the trend happens. It's a longer term trend. Right. So therefore, what you've written previously, you can reuse sometimes. And if you have offline content, sometimes there's a good offline content that many clients of ours they have their own. Thousands of articles, research paper. Sometimes that can be repurposed, digitalized, and presented in a new way, and that has still value. It's just, again, we have to really think about how we're repurposing it, because we don't want to create a copy. We don't want to create duplicates. That's something that search engines, they don't like at all, and they could penalize your websites based on that. So you just have to be careful.
Sorry. So one thing we do, Rita, is that we usually have a schedule of all the events that's happening in the world. So you have the International Day for Women, you have the International Day for and then we try to see things that we've created in the past that are relevant to this schedule, this calendar, and we try to resurface this content that we have.
If we were to leave our audience today with 3 do's and 3 don'ts, what would it be? Like 3 tips, recommendations. This is what you should do to optimize your content better. And this is definitely what you should not be doing. What would they be in all of your perspectives, since you all come from different backgrounds?
Do I start? Okay, so so 3 do's. As I said, do think of what is it that you're doing and do it really well. If you're a journalist, do your journalism really well. Get your facts straight and get the trust of your audience. Do know your audience really well, and understand what is it that they're looking for, what is it that they're discussing now. In my job, we don't just do it by following trends. We also have reporters who are talking to people who are curious. So yes, do understand your audience and do challenge them sometimes. You would be surprised that if you decide that I'm going to give you something different this time, they would be very interested in it, and challenging them might get them engaged and interested. Don't.
There's a long list of don'ts.
I don't know. I guess don't. It's important to know the SEO and all, but don't get too involved with that, and keep it at the back. Like, know it, understand it, and keep it at the back of your head, and then focus on doing what you're doing. So don't get too consumed with that. I guess that's my only don't.
From my side, it's really we really like to help our customers to get the best potential out of their websites, their platforms. So what we usually recommend them is bring the teams together very closely who are working sometimes siloed, like the IT team, the IT department is working sometimes very separate to the content team or a social media team. What we know from an SEO side is integration is probably the most important aspect. You need to integrate the different assets that you have, people working in content marketing and people working on your social media, people working on your website, and try to form teams that whose purpose is really about how to improve the overall experience of the customer. So that's the do is to also look at your customers, how they use your website, try to understand what you can do better. You can do A/B testing, conversion optimization as well. It's really about creating an environment that is test-centered, A/B test or testing, always testing different ideas, different things, whether it's working or not in relation to your goals and objectives. That's really the key important thing.
I've got a lot of do's. The first one is think mobile first. The second one is focus on your consumers' behavior. And the third one is to work with your technical team that includes the SEO team and your advertising arm to an extent to ensure that you get the best type of content out there.
And
not a lot of don'ts. I think if you make a mistake, you learn from it. So
clickbait.
Yeah, clickbait is one.
Don't
copy content, obviously.
Yes, don't.
Thank you.
I'm waiting on that.
Don't underestimate the intelligence of your audience. Do not ever do that, because if you try to fool them, if you try to create something just to get their clicks, they're going to know that and they're not going to come back to you. So don't ever underestimate the intelligence of Google and of your readers or your consumers or your clients.
And don't buy links. That's one of the other don'ts.
Yes.
Is don't try to game the system. Previously we heard as well, there are people always trying to game the system. The search engine is going to be more clever than any of your IT team or hackers that you involve mainly. That happened in the past of SEO is that people were trying to game it.
Well, we had interrupted you. Were you done with your thought
I
on
was
the do's
done,
and don'ts? Those were it.
Yeah, I was done. I said I don't have a lot of don'ts, but try to learn from your mistake. Try to always improve where you're going.
One last attempt. Any questions from the audience before we take a break for lunch? All right. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.